showed, or at least a half a dozen films about slavery.
Yes.
This is more than significant. And
Yes.
we live in a time where film and the amount of ways to access seeing movies have expanded. Distribution is in the process of changing. We have VOD, we have on demand, we have online screening, and films are released in the theaters and online at the same time, and on demand at the same time. So I say all that, and we all know that digital technology has made filmmaking a lot more accessible. So we've had, independent films like Newlyweds came out this year,
right,
by a friend of ours,
yes,
Judy Shepard,
King's
son, Shaka
King. Yes.
So there's a lot going on for black film.
Yes.
So just to use that as a context, the significance of 12 Years a Slave is several things. One, it is clearly and far away the most powerful and significant film to deal with slavery probably ever, and definitely since Roots.
Yes.
Two, the fact that it is getting the almost universal accolades, and what is coming up to be award season will quite probably be nominated in a number of categories, is particularly significant. Because as a filmmaker, one of the things that you're told as a black filmmaker by distributors when you want to get your film, no matter how good it is, and no matter how big a film you see here is that that black films don't travel, that people don't want to see this in other countries. There's no money to be made. So as a result, for many, many years, most films, and I'm not talking about Denzel or Eddie Murphy, I'm talking about most films that are considered black films. Those films, hold on 2 seconds, I'm sorry, Brian.
Yes, okay. I know you're multitasking there. And you're absolutely right about the dearth of black films coming
I'm
in.
sorry.
That's okay.
A delivery coming. But
Yes.
the what I'm getting at is that, like anything, if something's said long enough, it becomes true.
Right.
So if they say black films don't travel, then that means black films don't get to go. So there's no business model to go after.
Right.
So what's also significant is that these films, like The Butler and 12 Years a Slave, are films that are going to end up playing internationally. And what's significant is that international now is bigger than the American.
Yes.
And it's been going this way for a long time. There have always been films that didn't make money here that would make money overseas, but the market has matured so much. There are so many movie theaters in so many countries now that you can make, a film can make $200 million here in America and make $800 million worldwide. Okay, so for us to be locked out of that financially in a business as lucrative as the film industry and as powerful and impacting would be significant. So I believe not only is this film going to change, hopefully, people's minds, perceptions of slavery and all the historical importance of it, but it also is helping break down what I believe the doors are for international distribution, which is significant, because the bottom line is, Byron, that our stories,
right,
whether it's blacks in America, blacks in Africa, blacks or people of color in any of these countries, are as good, as important, as significant to the human experience as anybody else's, and should be told. The film is probably, and it's interesting, I just recently did an interview with Edward James Olmos, and he said what I believe. He says film is probably the most powerful storytelling medium ever created. And for it to not be seen and our stories not to be told, forget all of that. But if it's not, even if it does come and it's not seen worldwide, our perception, the perception of us worldwide, hopefully can broaden and change. Am I making sense to you, Byron?
You're making absolute sense, Mike. And the fact is, we're taking a look, because I know you've had a chance to interview the director and some of the talents of some of these movies, which we'll get to in a few minutes. We'll have to take a break here shortly. But the other significant impact of this, as much as we are seeing this amount of films about African Americans and Africans and black people from around the world, is that the statistics, however, are saying that we're really not getting a lot of work in Hollywood. So it's
that is completely true. And again, if let's put it this way. Here, you have enough of an understanding of the industry to know if black films start getting made, more black films will get made.
Yes.
And if more black films get made and more black films have to be marketed, they need to hire more people to understand that. So more people have to get involved in the filmmaking process to make cohesive and coherent decisions, because like anything else, some films are going to make money, some aren't. What's the reason? Do we market it right? Did we develop it right? Are we sensitive to this, that, the other thing? So, 12 Years a Slave clearly benefited from not only having a director who had a good track record and is seen as an artist, but because Brad Pitt produced it.
That's correct.
So there are always business realities, like you said, Byron. And if we are, forget looking at TV, we're severely underrepresented there.
Yeah.
And definitely in film. So I say in film, it is changing. TV, we've got a long way to go. And on an executive level, definitely. But again, and hopefully, we keep supporting these films as they come out. And unfortunately, it's not just up to us supporting those films. We have to do it, but it really is going to come down to us making films and the films being embraced by the majority. Absolutely. As significant, as worth seeing.
Absolutely.
Not that there aren't rooms for all the niche like there are for everything else, but the more significant, the more we can be seen as, valid. Yes. Are you?
I'm with you 100%. In fact, we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, I'm going to share some statistics with you about how few roles are really going to black actors, even with all these movies that are coming out. Listen, we're at the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
GoPro Radio, the fastest growing network in the galaxy, is leaner and meaner with a new attitude, new technology, and a brand new lineup. Tune in and get wired every Wednesday, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern with the BCS Experience featuring Byron C. Saunders, formerly of New York City's WBAI. Then at 6 p.m., it's the Black Agenda TV Express featuring sought-out political commentator Glenn Ford, formerly of America's Black Forum. Then at 8 p.m., it's time for Kay Thompson Live with the legendary radio host Kay Thompson of Inner City Broadcasting's WLIB and her son, renowned actor Eric Payne, who starred in such films as Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Drop Squad, and many more. Then, at 9 p.m., it's Food Rap, featuring Nina Markel, a.k.a. the unofficial mayor of Jersey City, and former Viacom marketing guru Shauna Glover. Last but not least, at 10 p.m. Eastern, it's The Sexy Party Show, with the bad boy of dating Mr. Locario of I Love New York fame and his partner in crime, Miles Cunningham. So get wired every Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, only on the GoPro Radio Network, www.goproradio.com. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right, we're back. I'm Byron C. Saunders, your host with the most. We're on the BCS Experience. We're talking about the new black films. I've got my good friend and New York City movie critic, Mike Sargent, on the air as my featured call-in guest, and we're talking about some of the statistics that you may or may not realize what's going on in Hollywood. And Mike, here's a statistic that just jumps right off the page. This just came out. It was posted October 30th, 2013. It was a study done at USC, Annenberg, and dealing with the amount of black films on the screen today. And what this survey was saying by Stacy L. Smith is that over a 5-year period, she was able to take a look at the films and over the 20,000 speaking characters. And what she discovered was the evidence revealed that in 2012, black or African Americans represented 10.8% of all speaking characters, while Hispanics represented 4.2% and Asians 5%. Now, this study was taken, Mike, in the top grossing films analyzed from 2012, where nearly 40% depict black characters in less than 5% of all of the speaking roles. In other words, we ain't on the screen. We're not there. We're just not there. And all of the movies are the top grossing films. So, Mike, and you as a critic, I know you see this. I've gone to some of the screenings with you. Your take on, of course, obviously, how are we getting our films out into the open and being seen? And then, of course, the politics of Hollywood. Tell us about some of that.
Well, two things, Byron. What the statistic you gave, like you read, is from over the last 5 years, and it really just shows. It's not just like, wow, hey, what a great year for black film. It's phenomenal considering what has been, and that statistic shows you. If that's what it's been for there to be the amount of black films coming out this year, and I'm talking like 20, and for there to be 7 films still coming on their way coming out, maybe 3 or 4 have come out already, dealing with slavery, it is enormously significant. So I say that to say, there's a definite politic involved, as there is with anything else, and you can see what comes out of Hollywood to know what that politic is. But it does come down to a lot of things that seem kind of simple, Byron, which is that you have to support these films that are coming out for them to continue to come out. And by supporting, and I'm just going to speak to certain people who know what I'm saying, I mean actually go to the theater and pay and see it, and not necessarily buy it on the street as a bootleg. Right. Because I have to say, as a filmmaker, those things do hurt. It's not, as they say, a victimless crime. It hurts us more. It's not like, a mob film comes out, doesn't do well, they stop making mob films. That's not the case.
Right.
Black films are even more of a, let's just say, there's more of a paucity than there would be of a Western. Because Westerns something big will come out, and then you'll start seeing a few Westerns. Yes. And then you'll have long stretches where there's not much. But with black film, and especially in the last 25 years, we have to evolve, and thank goodness it seems that there are signs that it is evolving. And that brings us back to 12 Years a Slave.
Yes.
I think that film is going to be significant. It's going to be more than significant. Like I said, looking in the context, I think it's also significant in hopefully what the real power of film is, But coming back to your question about politics in the industry, Byron, those statistics, in my opinion, it speaks volumes.
It's even worse.
It pretty much says the way it is. The industry is completely biased.
It's even worse for directors. Okay, we're talking about from the survey done on this same survey. There not only are we outnumbered on the screen, but behind the camera as well. Across 565 directors and 500 films, there are just 33 black directors between 2007 and 2012, and only 2 of those directors are female. That's amazing. And I know we have African American film festivals. We've got them all across the country, but we're talking about what's hitting the main screen in most of the major theaters across the United States. This is unacceptable. This is 21st century, but we still have not only 12 Years a Slave, we got more than that. Still slaves out there, still counting the years, because obviously we're not being given that opportunity to showcase your skills and talents. You are a director, Mike. I love your work. I've seen your work. You're a screenwriter. You're a wonderful screenwriter. How hard is it to get your work produced and up on the screen? I mean, what's going on behind the offices here?
Are you asking me those literally or rhetorically?
Yeah, literally and rhetorically, because you're in the inside and the outside of the industry. You're a film critic and you're a film director. So, kind of speak to it on both sides.
Having been a film critic for the last 12 years, we're sort of like being undercover when you're a filmmaker. Right. And I'll say this, it's called show business, it's not called show art. So at this stage, for filmmakers in general, forget being a filmmaker of color or a female filmmaker or any of the underrepresented artists in that field, essentially now it's easier to actually get something made Okay, the hard part is still distribution. How do you get it seen? How do you get your money back? And part of the problem is, and I just recently had a conversation. I was at the Big Apple Film Festival.
Right, down in
I was a judge at the films in the festival,
right.
And they had a dinner with the director. And he's a director who's been around. He's done a lot of good work, and he had a film in the festival, a very good film. And he's a bit older. He's got to be, let's say 60, early 60s, late 50s, and one of the things he pointed out, he says, as a filmmaker now, and I can tell you as a film critic, I get lots of movies to review on DVD.
Yes.
Okay, lot. My
Yes.
apartment is overrun with DVDs. And you'd be surprised how many movies that have big name, as big as it gets, actors, that end up just going straight to DVD.
Right.
For who knows, a variety of reasons. So the problem being that you might make a movie, you might get it done, you might have big name stars, but then how do you get it seen? And how do you get it to those people?
That's right.
And how do you make back your money? I know people who he was telling me a story of someone who pretty much had spent a ton of money, had a great documentary and all this thing, but because there's so much out there and there's so many places, wasn't able to get the offers of like $25,000. That's not even your catering on a feature film.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
The problem becomes distribution and marketing, and how do you get your film actually seen?
Okay.
And where will they put it?
That's right.
If your local blockbuster theater, if your local multiplex has got the same blockbuster playing in 4 screens, and then the other 2 blockbusters playing in 2 screens each, and then 1, 2. By the time you get to anything smaller or interesting, it's not there.
That's right.
So
it's not there.
What's happening is that small, mid-range, and some of the low-budget art films are not able to get. So they have to be creative. They have to do four-walling, as they call it, which means going into a city, blowing it out, renting a theater, letting people know, and just go city by city by city by city, like a traveling show.
Right.
So that's the problem, Byron. And, my hope is, and my belief is, that things are changing in regards to black film. But the realities of just being a filmmaker are, because there's so, because, hey, quality, everything's accessible. People making movies on their iPhone.
Exactly.
But, and that's great. And some come out. But if you've seen or read about 4 movies made on an iPhone that came out, imagine how many were made that never saw the light of day.
Yeah, hello.
Or that you'd have to get a film festival.
Right.
At best.
Well, hey, listen. This is what we have as part of the issue of getting our films out there and just really getting our story told. I know that you have been doing this for quite some time.
Well, Byron, can I give you some statistics here?
Certainly, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of those 7 films I was telling you about?
Yes.
About slavery in America?
Yes.
Only one of them was being directed by an African American.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you know, 12 Years a Slave is directed by a British
African. Yes, Steve McQueen.
Not an American.
Yes, exactly.
So I find that interesting too.
Very
There are a number of foreign directors and just directors from other countries who are doing these films about slavery, but it's not us.
Well, Mike, the other storyline that goes with that is where's the money that's going to this? I mean, Brad Pitt is one of the producers. This is like 42, and these are studio releases, so that they have big marketing budgets behind them. That helps. That helps more than anything. Now we're going to come back. I got to take a break in about 4 minutes, 3 minutes now coming up. But I want to talk about your review. I want to go. We'll name the film, and then just give me an off-the-cuff review. You've done this 1,000 times already, but it's nice to hear a film critic, an African-American film critic. I mean, you're somewhat of an anomaly in this industry.
Well, let's put it this way, Byron. There are a few of us,
yes.
And we even, because there was no organization, we started one called the Black Film Critics Circle, and
yes.
the dozen plus of us that are and do. we have united.
Well, this is good, and I want you to talk about that as well, and where you see us going in the future with films. That's part of the conversation we need to have. And listen, folks, you can join in on this conversation. Just pick up the phone. I know you're listening in. 347-884-9839. Once again, you want to talk to Mike Sargent and be on the BCS experience, that number to call is 347-884-9839. We're talking about the film industry. We're talking about black films and the stories that we are seeing on the screens. 12 Years a Slave, powerful piece of filmmaking. In fact, it's more than just that. It's a jolt. It will hit you in the gut. And unlike all the others, I mean, I went to the screening with you, Mike, on 42. It hit me hard. But this movie, 12 Years, you told me at the time, you said, wait till you see 12 Years a Slave. And you're correct. This movie is stunning because it is so real. And it takes us down a place where a lot of us have not been or forgotten or just read about, and some of it is not even in your history books because it is brutal. It's very brutal, but it needs to be said. And you know what, Mike? You know something else very interesting? The truth is very liberating. As much as it hurts, there's a liberating, cathartic moment that this film and a couple of our other films that we'll talk about after our break, which have really truly impacted on us all. So you're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. Don't go away. We will be right back.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a great opportunity. If you have a product or service, a talent or something important to say, now's your chance to have your own radio show. Whether you're just starting out or a veteran looking for a professional platform to enhance your presentation, the GoPro Radio Network is the premier place to cultivate and share new and exciting content. We'll help you to grow your audience and keep it growing long after your first broadcast. Now you have a voice. Call 212-696-8562 today or visit www.goproradio.com and you'll be amazed at how easy and affordable it is to have your own radio show on the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right. You're back on the BCS Experience. I'm Byron C. Saunders. I'm talking to my good friend Mike Sargent. You know, Mike, we're listener-sponsored. So you know what that means, right? Y'all got to put some money into the pot. All right? Listen, I know you love my show, folks. I know you appreciate what the topics that we discuss, but show us some love. And the way to do that, you go to www.goproradio.com and then hit that button that says Make a Donation. And when you get to the bottom line and you're ready to click in and send your amount in, make sure you denote that it's to support the BCS Experience. Show me some love. I'm showing you lots of love every single week. And I thank you for your generous support. I got another caller on the line. Let's bring him on in. Good evening. Welcome to the BCS Experience. Is this my good friend Bill Lee?
No.
No? Okay. Who are you then?
No,
Welcome.
this is our filmmaker, Eusavior. How are you today, sir?
Well, this is my producer, Tylon Eusavior Washington. Thank you. And you are indeed a filmmaker. Tylon, Mike Sargent, y'all are together on the line. I got another caller coming in. Let's bring them on in. 718, good evening. Welcome to the BCS Experience. And who might you be?
Yes, my name is Kevin. How are you, Byron?
Kevin, my good friend Kevin Scott. We're doing great. This is a hang, Mike. Okay? But guys, listen. We've seen the movies, okay? I'm going to let Mike give his review last, but I'm going to start off with the movie that everybody's talking about. Let's talk about 12 Years a Slave. Have you seen it yet, Tylon?
Yes, I saw it. I saw it the second day it came out, fully came out. And what really surprised me, I saw it at a theater in Union Square.
Okay.
In the Midtown, lower Midtown. And what surprised me was that, number one, I think it was a 2 o'clock show. The theater was packed.
Yes.
And I was one of the few African Americans in the theater.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Really? Yeah. Really, there weren't that many black people in the theater.
Well,
Mostly Caucasians. I just found that to be very unusual.
Now, Kevin, when you saw the movie, after the movie credits ran, how fast did they leave the theater?
They didn't leave fast at all.
Okay.
They watched. Most of the people watched the credits. When people walked out,
yes,
there wasn't a lot of talking. It was almost like they were in a trance almost.
And that's what it does to you. That's a significant story.
It was so intense.
It is indeed. And Tylon, your impression of the movie. You saw the movie yet?
No, and I'm pretty much like a lot of black folks. I think we're kind of like exhausted from, the sort of flagrant display of really just. I think to some extent it's like charity. Like there was a mention earlier about black films, and I think there cannot exist black films in a racist and imperial society. You can have a film with black actors, and perhaps a film with a black producer, or maybe perhaps a film with a black director. But in terms of black films, where we are in control, like Mike Sargent astutely pointed out, where we own our distribution, which is so critical. I think we have to be willing to kind of roll up our sleeves and do the heavy lifting of perhaps going direct to video, taking your films on a Chitlin circuit, taking that revenue and building an empire, and that's what I don't hear in most of all the mix of discussion about Hollywood, which is actually controlled by other people who, for the most part, I believe hold blacks in contempt, and only when they feel like, I guess, like I said, charity doing a film or two that depicts black life, that they'll throw money into it, but they control it and they can stop it. We have to get in control where we can tell more authentic stories. They can't stop it. Design a model and a paradigm outside of white-controlled Hollywood.
Okay. All right. I got another caller on the line. This is a hot topic. Let's bring him on in.
Okay.
Good evening. Welcome to the BCS Experience. And who might you be? Good evening. Hello. 718.
Good evening.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. And who are you?
My name is Dr. Boyce. How are you?
Dr. DLC Boyce, you've seen the movie we're discussing. Your opinion, what did you think of 12 Years a Slave?
My. What a visual and vivid account of what our people have experienced here in this country, at the expense of building it and at the expense of making it what it is today. We literally gave our backs. We literally gave our lives so that the America that we are all enjoying now could exist.
Oh, yes. And Dr. Boyce, as I want to let my listeners know, is a professional clinical psychotherapist. And so in essence, reviewing a piece like this for her impacts upon, obviously, a discussion with her clients who come in with many times stumbling blocks, African Americans, and trying to overcome racism, trying to overcome the vestiges of slavery. Its impact is still ongoing. And so, Mike Sargent, your professional review in a couple of paragraphs, how did it affect you? I mean, you're the critic. So what do you say to your audiences when you gave your review? What did you say?
Well, a couple of things, and it's not a film to just give a quick review. I can say great, brilliant, best slavery film I've made. But what's powerful about the film and what makes the film work as a story, because I as a filmmaker, I look at all films, all good films have something to say about the human condition. Slavery is part of the human condition. The specific racial slavery is a very specific thing to African Americans, and it's something that's our history. There are many, many things in history that are worth talking about, and this clearly is one of them. So that being said, what's powerful about this film is because it is what you'd call a fish out of water story in terms of filmmaking, it brings the audience in a way no other film ever really could. You know, you can one of the hard things about watching, like Talon pointed out, and I respect where he's coming from, is that if you're a black person, you know, that's not really what you're paying. You don't really want to pay money to go see a film about something like that. A lot of black people don't want to have that experience at the theater. Okay, for a number of reasons. They don't even have to be discussed. And a lot of white people don't really want to have that experience either. They don't feel great about this chapter of history and their potential ancestors' roles. What's great about this film is because he starts out as, and it is a true story, okay? Because he starts out as what would have been then considered middle class, you know, everybody can relate, he's got kids, he goes to the store, da-da-da-da, and then he's thrust into this. You instantly identify with this character on a level. And his bewilderment, his astonishment as to the level of cruelty, it's like visiting another world. And he brings people into this world. Now, this, unfortunately, is a world that existed at once, and we're still, as you've all pointed out, living in the shadow of that today, very powerfully. But here's the thing. To me, one of the best things I could say about this movie is that Steve McQueen is a masterful director. He, in my opinion, and I think this has to do with his sensibility and where he came from, the other disciplines, he was a painter and a sculptor and all these other things, why he makes films and what he is interested in, because all his films have to do with the human condition. He's made a beautiful film about a very ugly subject.
Yes,
and what he also did is, like the doctor who pointed out, is this is a film that it's more than just its story. It's representational. We see in that film all the archetypes, all the things that happen to black people. And as a black person, you see it, and you however much you're aware of it, you can start relating it to things that are going on today and how that we're still in the shadow of some of these things. Whether it's the mother being taken from her children after doing things she thought would you know, or from there's I don't want to give away too much of the movie if you haven't seen it, but there are all kinds of humane things done.
Absolutely.
But they're all fit within things that did happen, not only from the book, you know, and there have been criticisms like, oh, it's not exactly like the book, which is the most fatuous thing I could ever hear. But so to me, what made this movie so powerful is that you get to see not just all these awful things that happen, but the day-to-day inhumanity, how, you know, there's a point, I think Steve McQueen is such a good director, there's a point in the film where you almost kind of settle into like, all right, well, you know, he's a slave and it's not that bad,
right,
you know, and
right.
You don't realize he's setting you up because, yes, as a human being, we can adjust or adapt to anything on either side. We can adapt to being, you know, everybody in New York knows how to walk past a person begging, you know, and you become numb to human suffering.
That's right.
So clearly it's part of human nature to do that. Okay, we can just do that. We can become numb to it. At the same time, to accept our fate. That's another part of human. You know, no matter where you were, at some point, if you're hungry, you could eat out of garbage if you had to. So all of that, to me, is there.
Oh yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah, it is.
You know, the good, bad, the ugly.
And like
to
you
me,
said,
it's a film I think everybody should see.
And like
and
you said,
especially children.
Right. And like you said,
every country.
Like
that's my opinion.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
I'm
Rose.
sorry. Can I just say that, you know, I equate black, our community's hesitancy about not wanting to go to see it to that in the film when the lead character had been beaten, had been hung, and the slaves just went on about their business. And, you know, they knew that they couldn't touch a situation that was so volatile. You know, the young lady, she snuck and brought him water. I equate that to black people, the black community, not wanting, you know, the hesitancy about seeing it, particularly from the professional black community.
Right.
We have to face the fact that it's not, we're not living in the shadows of this. We're living in this. I mean, anytime a young lady has a complaint, goes to Washington, and gets shot in a car with her baby, I mean, we're not, we have to take our head out of the sand.
That's
we have to stand up and recognize that when our young people are so misled, they have no foundation at all. A movie like this begins to open up more than a conversation. It begins to open up a reality.
Yes, it does. And in fact, what's really amazing is that you if you think Stop and Frisk is an anomaly, check this movie out because this is the essence of stop and frisk. I got another caller on the line, and area code is 240. Good evening. Welcome to the BCS Experience, and who might you be?
Good evening. This is Linda from the Washington, D.C. area.
Hello, Linda. Have you seen 12 Years a Slave?
I have not seen it yet,
okay.
But I hear everybody talking about the reviews. I have not seen it.
I and here's something else, Linda and Dr. Boyce, and Mike and Tylon and Kevin, who's no longer on the phone with us. One of the things that I really encourage us as professionals, we are, all of these persons who are on the air today are professionals. We're the talented 10. We are the sort of the creme de la creme. I encourage you all, especially those of us who are in this mindset and in this frame, most of us who are considered no longer slaves. We've broken that chain around our neck. I tell you, after you see this movie, please engage conversation. It is so important to kind of help those who have just been impacted by something as, I mean, this movie hits you hard. You cannot, white or black, you cannot sit through this movie and not feel it. It is just, as Mike Sargent has said, it's just that powerful. And very few movies actually go that route. And Mike, it's important that your review says that to us. And I've heard you say it. We got to have these conversations, folks. I mean, some of us can't afford psychotherapy, but let me tell you, films like this demand an opportunity to flesh it out with each other.
Well, not only that, Brian, can I say this?
Yes, sir.
Part of what I think is significant, again.
I got a minute, Mike, so go ahead.
On many levels. What's that?
I got 1 minute before I got to take another break, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say is the fact, how many people prior to this even knew there was a book with a first-person slave narrative?
Yes.
Okay? And the fact that a movie could come out to let people, even if you don't see the movie, you should read the book.
Absolutely.
I posted something on your Facebook, Byron, that
I saw
you want
that.
to look at later.
I saw that. Yes, the narrative story itself that the New York Times had printed.
The New York Times covering it in 1853.
I got to take a break here, guys, and when we come back, I got a piece of history about another person just like Solomon. We'll be right back on the BCS Experience. Don't go away.
The views and opinions expressed on GoPro Radio Network shows are solely those of the speakers and are not necessarily the views or opinions of GoPro Radio Networks, Inc. or its affiliates. These broadcasts are provided on the understanding that they do not constitute professional advice or services. Individuals who speak in these broadcasts express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions. GoPro Radio Networks and its affiliates do not necessarily endorse or oppose any particular opinion or conclusion discussed in these broadcasts. You may not edit, modify, or redistribute these broadcasts in any way without the express permission of GoPro Radio Networks, Inc. GoPro Radio Networks assumes no liability for any of your activities in connection with these broadcasts or for your use of these broadcasts in connection with your website, computer, or playing device.
Well, all right now. Listen to the voices in your head. We're back. This is the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network, emanating from the chocolate studios of BW Moving Images over here in beautiful downtown Jersey City. Any event, we're talking about black films. We got a lot that's going on out here, folks. We're talking about, in specific, 12 Years a Slave. I got on the phone with us my featured call-in guest, Mike Sargent, New York City film critic. We've got Dr. DLC Boyce from Let's Talk You over in Brooklyn. Folks, if you need to get over your stumbling blocks, Let's Talk University with Dr. DLC Boyce. I encourage you to do so. And we've got Linda Martin all the way down in Washington, D.C., calling in, and of course my producer, Tylon Usavier, Washington. Now guys, here's a piece of history that you didn't know, but I know you know this picture. This is the date. It's November the 12th. It's a Sunday, and the year is 1809. The birth of Francis Frederick is celebrated on this date in 1809. He was a black abolitionist and publisher. Now, he was born a slave on a plantation in Fauquier County, Virginia. Now, when he was 14 years old, Frederick's master moved to Mason County, Kentucky. His master's wife used him as a house slave. However, after attending a prayer meeting, he was so badly whipped, he ran away. He was free for 9 weeks, but was captured and received 107 lashes of the whip. With the support of a local farmer who opposed slavery, Frederick was put in touch with the Underground Railroad, and in 1855 he met a Christian gentleman who helped him escape to Canada on the Underground Railroad. On his journey, he learned to read and write, and from Canada, Frederick went to the British Isles, where he traveled and lectured in hopes of helping other slaves. He returned to North America and worked for the spiritual and physical betterment of blacks in Canada, Boston, New York, and Baltimore. Frederick later moved to Liverpool in England, where he published his autobiography, 50 Years of Slavery, in 1869. In his first-hand account, Frederick exposes a darker side of slavery, which included both physical violence and masters intentionally preventing slaves from learning. His narrative also contains humorous anecdotes about slave life at his master's plantation, and he describes his escape on the Underground Railroad, his travels abroad, and the work he pursued when returning to the United States. The death of Francis Frederick is not known. Now, you know this person, folks. You ever see that picture of the slave whose back is you see with all the stripes on it? With all the whipping marks? You ever see that picture, folks?
Of course.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
That's Frederick Francis. Francis Frederick, right? That's Francis Frederick. And you know there's a detailed account of the whipping sores on his back that when I saw 12 Years a Slave, it made me think of this. He said the worst part of the wounds that you could not imagine was the smell of the healing, the pus, the infections. And when that woman is beaten to that level and that state, and they're dabbing her back with the salve, it just made me realize some things movies can make you appreciate. We don't have the smell-o-vision yet, but can you imagine? I mean, it's bad enough that you see the open wounds and you see the blood just popping off of her back.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what slavery was. It was brutal, people. It's extraordinarily brutal. And we have to give honor to those who engaged and endured, because we still have it going on, like Dr. Boyd said. All right, Mike. The Butler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The Butler. Because let's move forward. We got films that talk about the slavery, the Butler itself. Your take on the Butler. Give us a kind of an overview of the Butler. And I know you interviewed the director and a couple of the cast members as well. So tell us about that.
Well, the Butler, I think, is a significant film in that it uses a true life character, a person who really existed, and then fictionalize it to really, in many ways, almost be a history lesson. Okay, it's really at its core a father and son story, and like in all good dramas, the conflict is between the conflict of values, like what the Forrest Whitaker character did and how he, in many ways, was championing civil rights versus what his son was doing in the 60s. So it's a film that's significant, not only because it's got some enjoyable performances. Oprah, who I think will definitely be nominated, is really, you just go, wow, how come Oprah's not acting more? But it's a film that is, I think, in actuality, if I had anything negative to say, I think its intentions are even greater than the film. So I think it's definitely a film worth seeing.
Well, you know,
did you see it, Talon?
Yeah, Tylon, did you see the Butler?
Yeah,
What did you think of The Butler, Tylon?
I didn't like it at all. I'm just those films kind of burn me out. Every time I see them, and I think they send the wrong messages often. I think but besides like a lot of the emotional feeling kind of things that we do. I mean, we had feelings when we saw Roots. America, remember, they were kind of like emotionally invested into the narrative of black people. But I think also films can be an excellent educational tool. But I think that if we don't control the business paradigm of filmmaking, we will never see stories like Nat Turner, DeMarc Vesey, or the Mau Maus, or John Brown. I think the key, and what I was saying earlier about this being, a very racist and still very imperialist society, and still slaves, but just in a different kind of way today, where some people can't get health care, stop and frisk, and so forth and so on. Contextually, in looking at films and what they ought to be and can be, is really in the hands of, I guess, people like us who say, you know what, as opposed to being the ball players on the field, why don't we own a franchise? This way we can control more of the stories. We can tell more of our stories because, just about every week, there's a film about the Holocaust or some way connected to, what happened there. So that, I think part of our excitement when we see films like The Butler and so forth, because they're so rare. There's nothing, to really contrast, perspectives and points of view.
I'm going to challenge you, Todd. I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm going to challenge you to say that though they may make these films about the Holocaust, Jewish people go out and support them, even if they're not great or discovering any new ground. And I would challenge you to say that if we don't support films like 12 Years a Slave more and potentially better, or let's put it this way, we kind of have to work within the system. Like you said, we have to create our own systems. We have to kind of work outside and within, but you'll gain power by being successful within the system to go outside and do things outside the system. And the more that Hollywood, which always follows the money, sees that they don't necessarily have to care whether it's, culturally significant. But if it makes money and it wins awards, then there's that potential for them to keep doing it.
Well, all right.
And
I think it's
potential for those doors to get open.
Well,
So
guys,
I would
I guess
challenge
the
to say
difference.
that we as black film goers have to support these films. We can't just dismiss them and say, I don't want to see that.
Well, guys,
No, I think we
I'm
have
only
to
playing devil's
support.
advocate with you.
Tylon and...
I just think, in answer to that, real quick, let me just say, I think
I gotta wrap it up,
for
guys.
us not to support Hollywood, but we have to support each other.
There you go.
And I think that Hollywood has a rich history of contempt for black people, and Hollywood has made money. I think it's not just about the paradigm of economics as opposed to the control of ideas. So I think on one hand, I love the talent and I appreciate the talent of a lot of black film makers as well as actors. I love to see them working, but I think if the economy does not flow into something that we control as a collective, that really expresses the complexities of black life. Not a lot of people like to put black people and black folks into one little category. I think that we will always be at the behest of white supremacists.
All right, I got to wrap it up, guys, but this is like a hot topic. Folks, let me just tell you something. Thank you. Thank you, Tylon. Thank you, Mike. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Boyce. Thank you, Linda, for calling in, and thank you, Kevin, all of my loyal fans and listeners. Listen, go to the movies. Support black films. In fact, tonight, tonight is the opening of the Third International Puerto Rican Film Festival. It's on and you can get the chance to see the film. As I had Veronica on my show last week, guess what? You can go to the festival free tonight. The doors are open. Don't be shy. Some of those films are going to be great. You get a chance to walk the red carpet too. Wear your sunglasses. Listen, this is the BCS experience on the GoPro Radio Network. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Coming up next, listen, you got to come in and tune in. We've got the best shows on the universe. Coming up next is the Black Agenda TV Express from 6 to 6:30, and then followed that by Kate Thompson Live. Don't forget to also continue to stay on the GoPro Radio Network, because you got the Food Wrap, the best show in the universe. I mean, It's got great food, great talent. Shauna L. Glover and Miss Marcal herself, Nina Marcal. You can't beat it. And then when you close out the show itself, we've got, obviously, you can't go to sleep without having the Sexy Party Show. Mr. Lucario and Pavion O'Connor right here on the GoPro Radio Network. Hey, listen, I'm Byron C. Saunders, and it's been all about the BCS experience. Join me next Wednesday when my special guest will be you, my listening audience, with another opportunity to appreciate our rich cultural history and learn how it impacts on our lives today. Until then, I'm out of here. For the moment, peace and love always.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye. 90 seconds.